Hi everyone, my name is Mariah Beatty, and I wanted to sit down today and tell you the birth story of my daughter Ophelia. I've had a lot of friends and family ask about this story, and I want to more so have this for myself and my family to always look back on and kind of remember the very traumatic and beautiful story of how Ophelia came into our lives. And yeah, so let's get into it. So I had a fairly typical, normal pregnancy. None of my OBs were concerned about anything. The only thing that was abnormal for me was I was in a lot of pain in my pelvic and lower back area. But because I was so small, a lot of my doctors just assumed that was what was causing the pain. My stomach and my body was growing in ways it never had. So outside of that, the pregnancy was very normal and nothing about it was high risk. Then I was 30 weeks and 2 days pregnant on a Sunday. I'd been visiting some family and friends, and I was driving home and I realized it was in a lot more pain than I typically was in. My pelvic area was hurting really bad. It felt like she was just laying right on my bones right there. So I took some painkillers and didn't think much about it. I just kind of laid in bed the rest of the day. My husband worked that night, so I was just kind of chilling, staying relaxed. I was actually getting ready to go to bed. It was 12:50 a.m. and at the time I didn't know she was a she, so the baby had kicked me really, really hard, harder than I'd ever felt, and I was like, oh my goodness. That was kind of impressive for that small of a human being to make that kind of impact in my body. Like, it hurt so bad. And at the same time, like a few seconds later, I felt warmth down there, and I was like, oh my gosh, she just kicked me so hard, or the baby kicked me so hard that I peed myself. And I actually laughed because I thought, well, this is just part of pregnancy. I better get used to it. I'm 7 months pregnant now. I'm gonna pee myself. So I lifted up the blankets and I noticed it was not pee, it was blood. So I call my husband. I'm panicked. There's blood all over my hands, all over the floor, and I tell him what's happening. I can't find a phone charger and my phone is dying. He calms me down enough to tell me where a phone charger is and to call my OB that was on call that night. So she tells me to come in. I decide to drive myself to the hospital because my husband works about 40 minutes away from our house, and the hospital is already 30 minutes away. So I wasn't going to wait for him to come to the house just to drive another 30 minutes. I get into my car that my husband had been working on over the weekend, and the emergency brake is up. I can't get it to go down to save my life. I call him again, panicking, thinking I'm gonna have to wake one of my neighbors up and have them get the emergency brake down for me. He walks me through it, and by the grace of God, I get that emergency brake down. I've never been able to do that, so it was really just like a God thing at that moment, or pure adrenaline. I think it's a mixture of the both. And I realize as I'm driving that my car is on, I have like 11 miles to go before my car is on empty. That's concerning. And the only time I've ever really let my car get that empty before, ironically. So I fill up my gas tank and I drive myself to the hospital where I meet my husband. They do a lot of tests there. At one point there was a lot of clear liquid coming out, so we assumed my water had broke. But when they were doing tests, it showed that it was negative for my water breaking. So it was kind of confusing. My doctors at that point did not think I was going into labor. They had me on a bunch of monitors. They had my baby on monitors to just make sure they were watching mine and her heart rate. And at one point in the night, my husband taps me on the shoulder and says, "Are you feeling anything? Because it looks like you're having contractions." The monitor would go up or down depending on if I was having contractions or not, and it was going up. So I was like, I don't feel anything. It's probably just, my heart. I'm nervous, I'm anxious, my heart rate's going all whack. And as we continued to watch the monitors, the levels kept getting higher and higher. So I was having consistent contractions. And after a couple more tests, my OB came in and told my husband and I, basically, we were looking at going into labor, and we had two options. Both of which included me getting an ambulance and driving to a hospital that has a level 4 NICU, which is the highest level, most intensive care you can get for a NICU, I guess, where I would be, my option was to either be monitored for a few weeks and hope that they can delay labor long enough to keep her inside and help her to grow more before I have to give birth. Option 2 was to get to that hospital with the level 4 NICU and give birth. So my options were like not great either way. Of course, we wanted to try and delay the labor. That was what we were hoping and praying for. My husband is my rock. I know he had to have been panicking, but he stayed calm. He let me freak out. He let me cry. He held me, and he was just my rock, and I'm so grateful for him. The ambulance ride is about 30 minutes to the next hospital, and during that ambulance ride, I start to feel slightly uncomfortable, nothing like crazy, no pain at all yet. I don't even recognize contractions at this point. So I feel fine, really. Then within 5 minutes of being at the new hospital, I start to have horrible contractions. I'm not able to talk, not able to sit up, I'm having a hard time catching my breath. And we realized that contractions are about 30 seconds apart. They really came out of nowhere for me. I was like, it felt like I was hit by a bus, and I really don't know what happened. But yeah, so that was crazy, and they started to try and delay labor really quickly. They gave me pain medication for the contractions, and things calmed down for a while. It was about 8 a.m. when all this was happening. I'm being heavily monitored throughout the entire day. I get an epidural to help with the pain. That hurts like, oh, so bad. I was not prepared for how bad a epidural would hurt, but yeah, worth it, and it's so worth it. I would get it 1,000 times over, but oh my gosh, nobody warned me how bad it was going to be. Anyways, moving on. Throughout the day, I feel okay. I'm tired, and but I feel okay. We have a lot of family and friends out in the waiting room just there supporting us, even if they're not able to come and visit us in our room. We have them supporting us in the waiting room, which was so kind. They were all helping as best as they could, just to be there for us in whatever way we needed. And about 7 o'clock, my whole body, 7 p.m., my whole body starts to feel like it's on fire. I feel such an intense heat all over my body, and it feels like I'm quite literally burning. And pain starts to set in really bad, and the doctor makes the call that infection has set in and we need to go in for an emergency C-section in order to protect the baby and myself. Okay, side note, nobody ever told me how humiliating C-sections were. I know it's the last thing on a lot of people's mind. Like, obviously, bigger, more scarier things are happening if you're going in for an emergency C-section. But you're literally laying there, like, your arms crossed out, and they're, like, pinned down, kind of. Your legs are all out, and you're completely naked. Like, nobody told me that. How humiliating. I mean, I was really hoping they were going to put a sheet over me or something. Obviously, it's not the end of the world. They were just trying to get the job done and do it fast, so, I can't really be mad about it, but, like, man. So, I am heavily medicated, but I'm still awake. And they tell me and my husband that we have a baby girl, and oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. That was a really hard day. And both my husband and I had, wanted a girl. We would have been happy with a boy, of course. But, we both, wanted a girl deep down. And so for them to say, that we had a baby girl was, it was like the best thing ever. Just like everything about that day was worth it. My husband saw her and he got to be with her, which was a blessing. Sadly, I was not able to see her. When she came out, they took her immediately, and I understood why. I did hear her cry, so I knew that she was alive, and I was able to kind of take my own like deep breath because I knew that she was here and that she was okay for the meantime. But I started to have really horrible pains again, and they put me to sleep because I was feeling everything going on down there. I was feeling them pull at my skin and my muscles as they were trying to sew me back up. It was very painful. So when I woke back up again, I was in a different room and in the most excruciating pain of my entire life. I really cannot put it into words, this kind of pain. I did not know it was possible to feel this kind of pain. But basically, when you have an infection, they have to press down on your uterus and on your stomach to try and flush that infection out, make sure it's not resting inside of you. So it's very necessary, but oh my goodness, incredibly painful because it's infected, and so it's burning and it feels like there are knives like going into you. And it was going on for, I think, a little bit over an hour. I was screaming, I was begging my husband and the nurses to do something. My poor husband is just sitting there so helpless, calming me down as best as he can, holding my hand. Eventually it gets to the point that I really was in so much pain. I felt like I was dying, but I was not stable. I was in very critical condition. Basically, they called it not out of the woods. I was already on the highest amount of pain medications that they were able to give me without approval from the board of the hospital. So they called the board of the hospital and I was given ketamine, which is horse tranquilizer. And wow, that was an experience. I can't really explain what it's like to be on ketamine, but it was like everything was white around me and I could just see blurry like figures of what my husband and my mom looked like. It was insane, but I was not in any pain anymore, so I didn't really care that much. And I just kept asking my husband, I'm like, we had a girl, did we have a girl? And he said yes. I was like, there's no way, like we did not have a girl. It was just unbelievable. I was not able to see her until the next day, about, I don't know, sometime in the afternoon the next day was when I actually got to meet her and see her for the first time. Sorry, I didn't think I was gonna cry talking about this. It's really hard to meet your baby in the NICU. I was wheeled in next to her little isolate box, and she was on a ventilator, and she had wires sticking out all over her. And it was the most helpless feeling in the world to look at your child and not be able to do anything, not even be able to hold her. It was heartbreaking. It was also so beautiful because she was alive and she was okay. You know, she was very tiny. She weighed 3 pounds, 9 ounces. And I'd never seen anything more perfect. There's so much uncertainty being in the NICU and seeing your child on the ventilator and have her connected to all of these wires and tubes and not being able to hold her. But we knew we were in the best place we possibly could have been, and that is all we could have really asked for in that moment. Oh, okay. The rest of the week was kind of a blur. I was in the ICU for a while and then was moved onto the same floor where she was, and I got to be with her a few days longer before I was discharged. And then our NICU journey began. We were in the NICU for 39 days. and I'll have to make a separate video on that if you'd like to see it. But she is here and she is well. She is now about 8.5 pounds and she's perfect. To have like a near-death experience and not know that you're having a near-death experience is wild. Like, I came out of it and they're like, yeah, you were not okay. We were all like worried. We did not know if you were going to make it. That's scary. And it's also like, it feels unreal because I'm here and she's here. It's all just a blur, but God works in wonderful, mysterious ways. So that is Ophelia's story. That is my story and my husband's story and my family's story. I feel like I'm forgetting 1,000 things, and I probably am. But to any of you who reached out to my family and I during this time, who took the time to pray over us, to make us food, to buy us groceries and meals, and pay for hotel rooms so we could be closer to her while she was in the NICU, or come and clean our house, or anything like that. It was the most love, like overwhelming love and support, and my husband and I are beyond grateful for every single one of you who took the time to do that. I wanted to film this video so I can share our story with all of our family and friends who have been curious and who have been praying over us. I wanted to film this so that other NICU parents feel less alone, like there is hope. It's a very long, dark tunnel, and you don't know you're heading out of it until you're actually out. I also wanted to film this to remind myself to have something to look back on and just see the beauty in it and the horror of it, and just, you know, it's something I can never not be grateful after going through something like this. And so I feel very fortunate and very blessed to have had this opportunity to go through something like this and come out of it, you know, well, and more importantly, that she came out of it well, and all of that. Oh, it's okay. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you have anything else you would like to hear or see from me, please let me know. I would be happy to try and film another video for you. This was fun and horrible at the same time. But thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.